Aside from a trip to visit Grandpa and Grandma Williams, Alma's first introduction to society was the school Christmas program. We arrived a little early, and my former students clustered about for a good look at the baby. "Does she eat much?" Teddy Sawyer wanted to know. "You can tell she doesn't," Toby Elliott answered for me. "You can barely see her nose." He looked at me anxiously. "I wasn't expecting anything this little. Does she even weigh a pound?" "Oh, yes," I laughed. "She weighs almost 7 pounds, and she won't be this little for long, because she does eat a lot." "I'll be in 7th grade when she starts to school," Nancy Lawton said. "I'll watch out for her and help her with her work." "Thank you, Nancy," I said. "It will make me feel better to know that someone responsible is looking after Alma." Families began to arrive for the program, and the children disappeared behind the curtain that was stretched across the front of the room. Everyone stopped to see Alma and talk to me. "You should have held an open house for the town before you ventured into a public program," Sarah Jane chuckled. "Alma's the only one not saying anything, and she's the hit of the show." "Never mind," I said to my friend who was expecting a baby shortly herself. "Your day is coming." "It can't be too soon for me," she replied. The program began with the manger scene. One by one, the school children appeared with wrapped boxes representing God's gifts. A poem, a song, or a short essay identified each gift. Rosanna and Joanna, twin 6-year-olds, held a big box between them and recited, "God gave a double blessing, this is what we say, when he gave the moon to shine at night and the sun to shine by day." Teddy Sawyer's box held the gift of education. Toby Elliott had the gift of peace, and Joel Gage had parents. Everyone had something appropriate to say about his present before he placed the box under the tree. The program concluded with a song by the whole school and the usual bags of candy and nuts. Mary Webster, the new teacher who had taken my place, flushed with pleasure as the parents congratulated her on the children's success. "We worked together to write the speeches and the poems," she said, "but the ideas were all their own. We wanted to show the true spirit of Christmas in a different way." "You certainly did that," Len told her. "The program was very well done." "Nobody had the gift of snow," Daniel shouted from the doorway. "But we got it." We certainly did. The snow was falling in thick flakes as we hurriedly left the schoolhouse. Since we had all come in buggies, not sleighs, we were anxious to get home. "I trust that this is a temporary gift," Sarah Jane sighed as we parted. "This is not the winter I want to be snowed in with no human fellowship." With Christmas came another heavy snowstorm. I had a twinge of wishing that I had accepted Ma's offer to go back with her the week before. "You could bring the baby and come home with me now," she had said. "Len could come before Christmas and spend a few days. Pa is anxious to see his granddaughter, too." Len had urged me to do that, but I declined. It would be the worst Christmas ever if something happened so we couldn't celebrate together. "I'll wait and go with you," I told him. Now, in spite of being lonesome for my family, I didn't regret my decision. "It's only right that we begin our Christmas traditions now that we have a family," I said. "If there isn't a blizzard on Christmas Day, we can get out to visit our friends." On Christmas Eve day, Len and Thomas, Sarah Jane's husband, went to the woods to get trees. "I think we can trust them to get nicely shaped ones," Sarah Jane said. "I know right where I'll put mine, in front of the parlor window. Do you think we have enough ornaments for both trees?" We looked over the array of small things that we had been making, little wreaths made of red and green yarn, crocheted white snowflakes, pine cones decorated with holly berries, and small sleds made with twig runners. "That will be plenty when we finish stringing popcorn and cranberries tonight. We have red bows to add if there's more space to fill." "If I were any shape to tramp around in the woods, Thomas wouldn't have gotten away without me," Sarah Jane said. "Next year the babies will be a year old and we'll all go and pick out the trees." A pot of soup bubbled on the back of the stove, and I made cornbread to go with it while Sarah Jane mixed the dough for an apple cobbler. By the middle of the afternoon, the sky was beginning to darken and snow fell in little wisps. They'll be coming in soon, Sarah Jane said as she peered out the window. They shouldn't have had any trouble finding something. In fact, here they come now. I went to the window and we watched silently as the sleigh turned in the lane and stopped in front of the gate. As far as we could see, there was absolutely nothing in the sleigh except Len and Thomas. Well, so much for a tree this year, Sarah Jane sighed. We'll put wreaths on our ears and cranberries in our hair and be satisfied. I'm going to be interested in the story that goes with this trip. I opened the door and the men came in, brushing the snow off their coats. Did you have fun playing in the snow? I asked them. Or did the two of you spend the day visiting with friends? Why, no, Thomas replied. We just came in to see where you wanted your tree before we lug it in. I hate to be the one to tell you this, Sarah Jane said, but if you cut down a Christmas tree, you forgot to put it on the sleigh. Actually, we didn't cut it down, Len replied. I can see that, I told him. I'll watch you lug it in before I tell you where to put it. Whatever you say, Thomas shrugged, and they turned around and went back to the sleigh. Then they came carrying a small tub between them. It contained a perfectly shaped blue spruce, about 2 feet tall. While we were walking through the woods looking for trees with just the right shape, we saw a lot of saplings, Len explained. They've been sheltered, so they're not all pushed out of shape. We thought that in honor of the baby's first Christmas, we'd have a tree that we could put inside, then plant out by the lane as a remembrance. If you're too disappointed, we still have time to get a couple that we marked. Disappointed? Sarah Jane said. I think it's a wonderful idea. We'll be able to watch them grow with the children. You couldn't have done better if we had been with you. That's a vote of confidence if I ever heard one, Thomas laughed. Do we get whatever smells good for our work? After Alma was fed and asleep, Len popped corn in the fireplace, and we made many strings of popcorn and cranberries. What are we going to do with all of this corn? I wondered. I suggest some butter and salt on what's left over, Sarah Jane said. How about popcorn balls? Len said. We could take some to the Graysons tomorrow. We had all been invited to our friends, the Graysons, for Christmas dinner. Good! Let's make snowmen for the Grayson children. For the rest of the evening, we tried to outdo each other with creative figures made from sticky popcorn. Thomas made a lamb, complete with currants for eyes. Sarah Jane made a pig that sported a curly yarn tail. Len won the prize with a sleigh, piled high with candy canes. Daniel will love that, I said, and Serena is not too old to appreciate an animal or a snowman. Christmas morning was cold and stormy. Len heated a soapstone for my feet and wrapped a heavy robe around Alma and me. I had already bundled the baby into a woolen bonnet and coat and several heavy blankets. I hope she doesn't smother in there, I said as we started out. She won't as long as you're holding her right side up, Len said. I was sure that I was, but I unwrapped the layers enough to see her face anyway. The scarf around my face froze almost at once, and the snow clung to my eyelashes. It took less than 10 minutes to reach the Graysons, and Regal seemed to enjoy the trip more than anyone. He pranced and shook his head and snorted happily. When we drove into the yard, Daniel threw open the front door and the whole family hurried out to meet us. Oh, please, Mrs. Williams, may I carry the baby in? Serena pleaded. I promise I won't drop her. I doubt she'd feel it if you did. She's so well padded, I said with a laugh, and handed Alma to her. Len and Jerome took Regal to the stable, and the rest of us went into the house. I drew in a deep breath. Wait until Sarah Jane walks in, I said. She'll sniff and say, Bayberry, I love bayberry candles. They smell like Christmas. You just see if she doesn't. Serena laid Alma on the sofa and pulled back the blankets. Are you sure you put the baby in here, Mrs. Williams? I haven't found her yet. She was there when I left home. Keep digging. Here they are, Daniel shouted from his post at the window, and Alma awoke with a howl of protest. She's here, all right, Serena reported, and we unwrapped her as quickly as we could. After the coat and bonnet were removed, and Serena was seated in the rocker with her. Alma's cries subsided. She seemed to look around with interest. I think she can see the tree, Serena said, as Sarah Jane walked in with Myra. Of course she can, Sarah Jane said, and she can smell the bayberry candles. They smell like Christmas. Myra laughed at the direct quotation as she took Sarah Jane's coat and scarf. Good, she said. I've made some for you to take home. I'm so glad you could all get here. Since you all have brothers and sisters for your parents to be with today, I don't feel sorry for any of them. Sit down and I'll bring you something hot to drink. The day rivaled anything that Dickens ever wrote about Christmas. We played games, sang carols, and admired Daniel's and Serena's gifts. They enjoyed their popcorn toys, and Myra had to be quite firm with Daniel to keep him from consuming several before dinner time. The meal that Myra put before us was a feast indeed. There were tender turkey and ham, fluffy mashed potatoes, and candied sweet potatoes, creamed onions, peas and carrots, as well as hot rolls and butter, pickles, jam, coleslaw, and cranberry jelly. When Daniel was about 3 years old, Jerome said as he carved the meat, he thought we weren't filling his plate fast enough, and he complained loudly. You must have patience, Daniel, his mother told him. I don't want patience, he replied. I want turkey. Daniel grinned self-consciously as we all laughed. He's probably thinking the same thing right now, Serena observed. Fortunately, he's old enough not to say it. The day ended too soon, and it was time to return home for the chores. This has been as different a Christmas as I've ever had, I said, but one of the nicest I can remember. I thought I'd miss being with my family, but I really was with them. Family is wherever there are people you love.